Imagine this. What if the thing that destroyed the Roman Empire wasn't the barbarians? Not the soldiers at the gates, not the deranged emperors in marble halls, but the money in the treasury? It may sound exaggerated, but let's take a closer look. Because if we don't understand what happened to Rome, we're going to live through the same story, only on a much bigger scale. When people hear the fall of Rome, the same scenes come to mind: soldiers climbing fortress walls, collapsing legions, palace intrigue filled with assassinations and power struggles. But empires don't fall only from external attacks. They rot from the inside first. And the most silent, most corrosive rot almost always begins with money. Rome didn't fall just because of invasions. It wasn't just corruption or palace politics. Rome fell because its currency collapsed. And the lessons from that collapse still echo today, every time we talk about dollars, euros, inflation, interest rates, and debt. So let's take a short trip back in time. For centuries, the backbone of Rome's economy was a single currency, the silver denarius. First minted around 211 BC, it was nearly pure silver. Soldiers were paid with it, merchants demanded it, and people stored their wealth in it. The denarius wasn't just a coin, it was metal-made confidence. As the empire grew stronger, the currency grew stronger. As long as people trusted Rome, they trusted the denarius. But running an empire is neither cheap nor easy. Legions needed salaries, roads and aqueducts needed construction, borders had to be protected, wars had to be financed. By the 2nd century AD, Rome was drowning in constant crises, inside and outside. Taxes were rising, but even that couldn't cover the expenses. So emperors turned to one of the oldest tricks in history, debasement. Raising taxes caused rebellion. So what did they do instead? They kept the coin looking the same and reduced the silver inside. Under Augustus, the denarius was about 95% silver. Under Caracalla, it dropped to around 50%. By Gallienus, it had fallen below 5%. A coin once made of solid silver had become a bronze disc washed with a thin layer of silver. To the eye, it still looked Roman, but it was empty inside, and of course the people noticed. What happened next is predictable. Inflation exploded. This wasn't a theoretical problem in an economics textbook. It was a crisis felt at the marketplace, at the bakery, on payday. A measure of wheat that once cost 1 denarius suddenly cost dozens. Soldiers demanded higher pay because their salaries no longer bought anything. Merchants refused to accept debased money and turned to barter, gold, and anything with real value. Local economies broke away from Rome's monetary system and returned to direct trade, because there was no trustworthy money left. As confidence fell, emperors minted more and worse coins. If it has no value, we'll fix it with volume, they thought. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? I can almost hear your answers. This cycle, falling value, rising prices, printing more money, was the first major rehearsal of the inflation crises that would repeat throughout history. By the 3rd century AD, things spiraled out of control. This was the era known as the crisis of the 3rd century. For nearly 50 years, the empire was shaken by invasions, plagues, civil wars, and economic collapse. Emperors came and went like characters in a TV series, appearing for a few episodes, then killed off and replaced. But behind the political chaos, one culprit stood out: a broken monetary system. Taxes were collected in increasingly worthless coins. Farmers abandoned their land because they couldn't pay. Trade routes collapsed. Trust evaporated. The government panicked. They tried price controls, forced labor, stricter rules. But they forgot one thing. If the money is broken, no law can save the system. One emperor, Diocletian, made a radical move. In 301 AD, he issued the edict on maximum prices, fixing the price of thousands of goods and services. The penalty for breaking the law wasn't just a fine, it was death. The result? A complete disaster. If the currency has collapsed, fixing prices on paper means nothing. The black market exploded. Official trade collapsed. People relearned a simple truth. A law cannot fix a rotten coin. Eventually, Rome abandoned the denarius altogether. Constantine replaced it with the solidus, a pure gold coin. It would last centuries in the Eastern Empire. But for the West, it was already too late. Hollowing out the denarius had hollowed out Rome's economic soul. Armies could no longer be sustained, trade dried up, trust disappeared. Rome didn't fall in a single day. It unraveled slowly. Then all at once. And one of the sharpest threads in that unraveling was the collapse of its currency. So what does this have to do with us today? In reality, everything. Destroy the money, and you destroy the empire. Rome thought it could fool its people. The emperor's face is still on the coin. It looks the same, has the same name. What difference does it make? It makes all the difference, because the value inside was gone. Modern governments think they can do the same, print money, manipulate interest rates, inflate debt away. We no longer have silver denarii, but we have money printed without backing, bloated balance sheets, endless debt cycles. And history whispers the same message every time. The bill always goes to the public. Inflation isn't an accident. It's a silent, invisible tax. And it has been striking empires for 2,000 years. As we reach the end of this story, one question should stay in your mind. If Rome destroyed itself by destroying its money, aren't we making the same mistakes today? If this gave you a new perspective, then stay with me. Together we'll explore the trail from Rome to Weimar Germany, from Zimbabwe to the post-1971 dollar, and uncover the money and debt crises that shape the world. History has all the answers. What matters is knowing where to look.